Welcome to this spin-off episode of the series of Awakening of a Third World War. We've got the road to World War III, the scheme behind the rise of the United States. Dividing this into several sections, we've got a United States of America, road to the Monroe Doctrine between 1775 and 1823, where we've got the expansion of the United States between 1823 and 1899. America in a state of vigilance between 1902 and 1941. We've got the rise of the United States through the Cold War between 1943 and 1991. Then we've got the American Golden Age and growing resistances between 2008 until present period. The United States of America, the dismantlement of the Spanish Empire and the road to the Monroe Doctrine. In 1783, the greatest power in the world is the Spanish Empire. We've got 9 different empires across the world. In 1899, the US is at its territorial zenith, but before that, we will see how they grew to this size in the first place. It all began in the American Revolution, where heavy taxation of the British on American goods had them rebel. The Americans were inspired to fight against all empires for their subjugation they did on all indigenous peoples. Through the Napoleonic Wars, a powerful ally emerged, Napoleonic France, that detested all empires and the monarchy, believing they should be removed to establish a true peaceful world order of liberty. So the United States was willing to work with this nation that had equal ideologies. And then came in the Second War against the British, trying to liberate the Anglican peoples of America. France helped the US significantly through invading Spain in 1808 and dismantling Spanish influence in the Americas, and now the US would aid resistances across America against the Spanish, including the Colombian military leader Bolivar. However, in the process, the US was becoming into what they swore to destroy. They were becoming imperialists themselves, fueled by hatred towards other empires, specifically Europeans, started to fund them for influence and trade. The 1823 Monroe Doctrine sees President Monroe states that America is no longer able to be colonized by Europe, that they should move somewhere else and let these people be free. However, in the process, the irony in this is that the United States begins to expand and build its influence all across the American continent through the Mexican-American War, the Second Opium War, the Boshin War, and the Spanish-American War. Dispute crisis for Texas had the United States begin a large invasion of Mexico. They wanted to spread all towards the Atlantic Ocean and control 2 oceans, which would both be useful for America's defense and also to begin their own naval influence on trade. The Second Opium War, the US joins Britain and France to force China to trade with them, becoming equal imperialists despite stating they were different. The situation happened in Japan during the Boshin War. The imperial faction was supported by Britain, France and the United States against the shogunates of the Tokugawa. It would have imperial forces eventually succeed and begin a westernization of Japan as a sort of puppet state for the West through the Meiji period. By 1898, there was growing rebellions in Cuba against the Spanish, and the United States wanted to eliminate this nearby imperialist as quick as possible. Due to their large industrialization and Spain's growing weaknesses, the US was able to win in the same year. and gained these territories from the Spanish. By 1899, the US is at its territorial zenith and has forced the collapse of 3 empires and stalled another 4, which isn't really a coincidence, isn't it? Now America is in a state of vigilance as there are new arising threats, the British and the French, which are so-called allies, the Central Powers, and later the Axis powers. Having World War I, the interwar period, and World War II, the most decisive moments for the United States. By 1884, we've got 15 empires across the world, many which are threatening the United States. However, the trick for this is to turn empires against each other, which they're already doing on their own, and the US simply has to watch and wait, support others against others, leading to World War I due to the scramble for Africa. The outcome of the First World War sees the collapse of 4 empires, totaling 7 empires destroyed by the United States since its independence, and the creation of western puppet regions of the former Austro-Hungarian Empire, Turkey, and the Weimar Republic. The US believed World War I to be the end of imperial influence and sent in the Wilson 13 points, which basically demands secession of imperial power towards free nations influenced by the United States. But the US underestimated their power entirely, with Britain and France being the major powers, still rivaling the US's economy and influence. So they have to wait for another war to ensure that they are able to express their entire power across the world, which will be seen by the road to World War II. Since between 1919 and 45, there are 12 empires across the world, and many are beginning to rival each other. The dominant power remains the British Empire, but it won't be for long once they are threatened by the Axis powers, and later through the spread of communism by the Cold War. Outcome of the Second World War is far more decisive for the United States, as another 3 empires are destroyed, having a total of 10, and the creation of even more western puppet regions, having Britain and France under the mercy of the United States, against the final greatest threat of the Soviet Union. The Cold War sees the rise of the United States, in which the dominant power is officially them, the United States, the greatest power that can no longer be threatened so easily by the empires. We only have 10 empires across the world, which most of them are either significantly weak or at the mercy of the United States. The minor empires collapse rather quickly and easily. Imperial Holland in 1949, Belgium in 1960, Portugal in 1975, and Spain in 1976. Nationalism is so intense, and the US has been manipulating that until this point. The 1956 Suez Crisis sees the British and French colonial empires in inevitable decline. They attempt to fight for supreme power since the end of the Second World War until this point, but the Suez Crisis puts them at a great disadvantage, and the USSR collapses by 1979 through the Soviet-Afghan War and growing inflation due to extreme military spending without fortifying the economy. And by then, the ultimate victory is given to the United States after decades and perhaps a few centuries of conspiring. Another 3 empires are destroyed, totaling 17 empires destroyed in less than 200 years, demonstrating it was no coincidence at all. All empires have been destroyed for a new one, which nationalism has been in the support of the United States the whole time. And we've got the rise of an American Golden Age, and also resistances against the US. We've got the rising nations of Russia, China, and the Middle East. Specifically, the Arab world against the Western Republic's Treaty Organization. A confederacy of independent states is created against the United States, threatening them for the last time, but if they are eliminated, then no one will ever be able to threaten the United States ever again. By 2008, there are only 4 empires, if you can call them empires, because the US is theoretically a democracy, and Russia and China don't really like empires either, but they are very large and exploit a lot of resources and ethnic groups, theoretically making them empires. And this second Cold War beginning under President Trump sees the rising tensions between the West and the East. And this competition for economic and territorial factors will result in the Third World War. Thank you for reading, and remember, long live the Confederacy.